himself. Laborie has been shot. That was an official announcement from the police. Laborie, the most famous lawyer in France, has been shot by an assassin who, strangely enough, shouted that it was Dreyfus whom he had killed. Here's John Hollenbeck.
Laborie's alive, John. Laborie's alive. The bullet hit him in the fleshy part of the back, but the wound's not fatal.
Where have they taken him, Don?
They've taken him to an anteroom, and the doctors are taking care of him there.
Did he say anything?
Just after he'd been shot, he said, "I may die, but Dreyfus is saved. Dreyfus is saved."
Did you find out what they decided to do about the trial, Doc?
Well, Maitre Demange, Laborie's colleague, wanted to ask for a recess.
I should think so.
Yes, but Laborie said no. He insisted the trial go on. Here comes Demange now out of the anteroom.
That's right, Don. Maitre Demange is approaching the bar. The crowd is quieting down. They're under control, although some people are still weeping and crying, "Ah, les misérables, les misérables." The president of the court speaks.
Que votre confrère a été blessé. Vous pouvez demander une remise de l'audience demain.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mais Maître Laborie préfère que l'on continue le procès. Avec votre permission, je vais prendre sa place.
The court is offered to suspend for the day, but Maitre Demange says it is the wish of Laborie that the trial be resumed. He's asked for the court's ruling on the Schwarzkopf testimony, and now the president speaks again.
Que seul le président de la Cour peut ordonner une commission rogatoire. Mais, d'après le code militaire, les juges composant le tribunal n'ont pas qualité pour l'ordonner.
Donc, Monsieur le Président, vous recitez toujours dans vos
The president of the court says he is the only one who can permit Schwarzkopf's testimony, and Monsieur Demange is pressing him for an answer.
Par un attaché militaire allemand ne peut pas être admis ici.
The president of the court has just announced that he will not admit the evidence of a German attaché in a French court. The audience is on its feet, shocked, shouting out wildly and protesting. Dreyfus, the prisoner, is frozen in his chair. He appears shocked, and his face looks as if he's already been returned to the solitary and barricaded hut on Devil's Island, which he occupied for 5 long, terrible years. This refusal to allow Schwarzkopf's testimony means Dreyfus's chances are gone. It also is an affront to Imperial Germany, as Colonel von Schwarzkopf is an important figure in German intelligence. We take you now to Berlin. Ned Chalmer reporting.
The Imperial German government has prepared a statement to be released officially on the decision of the French court in regard to Colonel von Schwarzkopf's testimony. Although Germany and France are traditional enemies, they have never officially interfered with one another's internal peacetime affairs. Today, however, the Imperial German government, to uphold its honor among nations as it states, goes on record before the whole world with the following announcement, I quote, "For the preservation of his own dignity and in fulfillment of a duty to humanity, the Secretary of State makes the following statement. I declare in the most positive manner that no relations or connections of any kind ever existed between the French Captain Dreyfus and any German agent." That's the end of the announcement, and that bears out Colonel von Schwarzkopf's statement, which has been barred as evidence. I return you now to John Daly in the courtroom at Rennes.
The official statement which you've just heard from Berlin can have no effect upon the deliberations of this court. The court retired immediately after refusing to hear Colonel von Schwarzkopf's testimony. The opinion here in the courtroom is divided. Some observers think that the court refused to hear the testimony because it had already decided to acquit Dreyfus. Others believe that Dreyfus is doomed once again. Maitre Laborie is back. He's here in the courtroom. His wounds not as serious as we thought. He insisted on coming into the courtroom in order to hear the final verdict, was greeted by a sustained ovation when he entered. It was one of the happiest moments, by the way, of this month-old sad trial. Maitre Laborie is now sitting on a well-cushioned armchair provided by the court. Dreyfus has just stretched out his hand to Maitre Laborie. The smile of keen pleasure lights up his usually impassive features. Dreyfus, of course, is the symbol of martyrdom in this trial, but it must also be remembered that he is more than a symbol. He is a man who has suffered much, a man with a wife and children fighting for his and their honor. The judges are entering the court again. They've not been out long. The spectators have risen, and a hush falls over the court. This is the moment in which it will be determined whether the twilight of the 19th century will also see the twilight of the Republic of France, or instead the triumph of justice. Dreyfus has risen. At this final critical moment, his face has again become pale and impassive. The judges are standing in their places, full military uniforms, white plume in the hat of the president of the court, black plumes in the hats of the other judges, medals, gold-striped swords, soldiers standing erect in their formal bearing, their hands unsullied in white gloves. The president is holding a white paper, and now he's reading the verdict of the century.
Septembre 1899, le Conseil de guerre, ayant délibéré en secret, déclare l'accusé coupable à la majorité de 5 voix contre 2.
Guilty. Dreyfus is guilty by a vote of 5-2. The audience gasped out a long, deep O. The president cried out silence. The gendarmes are closing in on the spectators, and now the president continues.
Le tribunal condamne Alfred Dreyfus à la peine de 10 ans de travaux forcés.
10 years. The original sentence has been cut from 5 to 10 years.
Je vous préviens, pas de manifestation. Sortez paisiblement.
The reading of the verdict is finished. The judges are leaving the court. The gendarmes are pressing the spectators, and no one is uttering a sound, because the president of the court ordered that there be no demonstrations, no outcries of any kind whatsoever. The court is being cleared quietly and quickly. Dreyfus was immediately surrounded by the guards and taken out of the room, and the atmosphere of this court now is like a tomb. The original sentence of life imprisonment was unanimous, but this time it has been cut to 10 years, and 2 of the judges, as you noted, dissented. In a sense, this may be said to represent some measure of triumph, but still, a human being, innocent in the eyes of the world, must now spend 10 more years of degradation and isolation in a guarded hut on Devil's Island, separated from his wife, his 2 children, and his home. Messages of protest are already beginning to pour into the news headquarters here in Rennes. And so for a report on world reaction, we take you now to Don Hollenbeck, who has gone back to news headquarters.
Before we give reports on the reaction from overseas, authorities have so far failed to capture or identify the assassin who apparently was trying to kill Dreyfus but shot Mayor Laborie instead. Observers are speculating as to whether the shooting was the work of a fanatic or if it was a far-reaching and well-thought-out plot on the part of the military to end the case by assassination of the prisoner. And now for what the world thinks of it all. Telegrams are pouring in from all over the globe denouncing the verdict, denouncing it as a monstrous defiance of conscience and reason. There's a telegram from the Italian actress Eleonora Duse, one from the GAR in Nebraska, another from the Protestant Episcopal Church in the United States. Emile Zola has wired Maître Laborie the following statement, and I quote, "Henceforth count me as a most determined partisan for a vigorous fight, and no mercy to the foe when we have him down. From this day I re-enter the arena, never again to leave it." That's Emile Zola's statement. There are protests from businessmen in America, England, Russia, Turkey, Hungary, Austria, and Germany. They threaten to withdraw their exhibits from the forthcoming Paris Exposition of a Century of Progress. And now for comments in other parts of the world, we switch you first to New York. Douglas Edwards reporting.
Here in New York, we're having violent protest demonstrations, and reports of more protests are coming in from all over the United States. The sight of a handsome French officer on Broadway in front of the Criterion Theater had created a riot. Men cried out, "Shame on France," and "Long live Dreyfus." Mark Twain, the famous author, has offered to help the Dreyfus family in any way he can. The old Plymouth Church in Brooklyn has followed its time-honored custom of taking definite action on all public questions. It's crowded to the doors. Dwight L. Moody, the evangelist, condemned the court-martial of Dreyfus as follows: "We who are here for Christian worship condemn the trial and trust and pray that it yet may be overruled by a higher authority acting for the honor of France and in fear of God." And now for reactions in England, we take you to London. Arthur Hannes reporting.
The Daily News has summed up the trial in a brief statement. I quote, "It is no longer Dreyfus, but France herself that is on trial." And the Times, normally a conservative newspaper, burned its pages with this editorial comment: "We do not hesitate to pronounce the Dreyfus trial as the grossest and most appalling prostitution of justice the world has witnessed in modern times. All outrageous scandals in history pale into insignificance beside the crowning scandal of the verdict." Just a moment. I've just been advised that our correspondent Ken Roberts in Carpentras, France, has succeeded in arranging an exclusive interview with the wife of the condemned man, Madame Lucy Dreyfus. I switch you now to Carpentras and Ken Roberts.
The town of Carpentras is an old walled city that was once the residence of Pope Clement V. Madame Dreyfus and I are in the home of a friend of her husband's family. Madame Dreyfus, why are you here in Carpentras?
Because it was here that I expected to shelter my husband should he have been liberated. The people here are not the victims of prejudice. They do not hate.
I see. Madame Dreyfus, may I ask why you are not at Rennes with your husband?
I was at Rennes. But at Rennes, Alfred feared for my life. He told me to take the children here. He did not want them at Rennes to see a dishonorable spectacle.
And now that your husband has been found guilty again, what will you do, Madame Dreyfus?
I will do what I promised to do when he was first unjustly convicted 5 years ago. I will devote my life to proving that he is innocent.
Well, is it true, Madame Dreyfus, that you made a pact with your husband that if he fights to live in spite of the tortures of Devil's Island, you will fight to liberate him?
Yes, that is true. He could have easily committed suicide on Devil's Island by taking off his hat and baring his head to the sun for only 10 minutes. It was torture to remain alive. 5 years in solitary confinement. And when the false rumors spread in France that an American rescue ship was off Devil's Island, they punished my husband by keeping an armed guard constantly in his cell, day and night, pointing a pistol at him, hoping he would make a move so they could have an excuse for killing him.
The world knows, Madame Dreyfus, that it was your love and your devotion to your husband's cause that kept him alive.
He needed more than that. He asked me to send him English books to keep his tortured mind occupied. That is how he learned English. And me, too, I read them also.
Do you plan an appeal, Madame Dreyfus?
Yes, immediately. Maître Laborie, I am so glad he was not hurt. He is a great man. He will leave for Paris at once. And for my part, I will devote my life to reaching every wife and mother. I will move the hearts of every wife and mother of the world. For every wife and mother of the world would fight so that their husbands, their sons, shall not suffer injustice. I will tell all.
This is John Daly at News Headquarters in Rennes. We have interrupted Madame Dreyfus to bring you a bulletin. Captain Dreyfus has been pardoned. I'll repeat that. Captain Dreyfus has been pardoned. The President of France has just announced that due to extenuating circumstances, Captain Alfred Dreyfus has been pardoned in principle. It's not yet clear what is meant by the phrase in principle or what the extenuating circumstances are, but one thing is sure now, Dreyfus has been pardoned. Here's another announcement just been given to me. Dreyfus accepts the pardon. His attorney, Maître Laborie, urged him not to accept, but to fight on for complete vindication. But Dreyfus's doctor declared that his body could not stand the ordeal of further imprisonment. Here's still another announcement, and this one comes from the French Ministry of War. In a special order to the French Army, the Minister of War said, the incident is closed. I ask you, and if need be, I order you to forget the past in order to think only of the future. I cry heartily, Vive l'Armée. The Army belongs to no party but only to France, and I repeat, the incident is closed. That's the end of the order.
September 8, 1899, Rennes, France. Alfred Dreyfus is pardoned, but the fight against prejudice goes on.
You have been listening to the Dreyfus Case, another broadcast in the series You Are There, produced and directed by Robert Louis Cheon. The Dreyfus Case was written by Joseph List and Mr. Cheon. The part of Maître Laborie was played by Joseph DeSantis. Maurice Tarplin was Colonel du Petit de Clam. Charlotte Holland was Madame Dreyfus. Also in the cast were Juano Hernandez, Tonio Selbert, and Guy Sorrell.
The Dreyfus Case was broadcast originally by CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System, and rebroadcast for our men and women in the armed services in our series, You Are There.